All right. Stand for the pledge. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I call this meeting of the Town of Plattsburgh Town Board to order for 7 p.m. Roll call, please.
Bernie Bassett.
Here.
Thomas Wood.
Here.
Martin Manick.
Here.
Paul Lemoy.
Here.
Gerard Benedek.
Here.
James Coffey.
Here.
And Rick Howard.
Resolution 333, approving the minutes of the previous meeting.
Resolved that the minutes of November 7, 2013 be approved and the reading of the minutes be dispensed with.
Motion. Mr. Wood, second.
Second.
Mr. Renadette, any discussion? Roll call.
Thomas Wood.
Yes.
Martin Manick.
Yes.
Paul Lemoy.
Yes.
Gerard Benedek.
Yes.
Bernie Bassett.
Yes, resolution carries. Resolution 334, abstract 11B.
Resolved that the abstract of audited claims number 11B-13, 3475 to 2548 for $209,530.03. And abstract 11B-13, 419 to 438 prepays in the amount of $367,709.25. Be received as reviewed by the audit committee and the supervisor is hereby authorized to pay such.
A motion. Mr. Renadette, second. Mr. Lemoy, any discussion? Roll call.
Thomas Wood.
Yes.
Martin Manick.
Yes.
Paul Lemoy.
Yes.
Gerard Benedek.
Yes.
Bernie Bassett.
Yes, resolution is carried. I do need to go back, though. There was something looked wrong in the numbers of the abstract 11B. It should be 2475 to 2548. It doesn't change anything, but Gerard, Paul, any concerns?
No problem.
We will amend that to 2475. The resolution did carry. Resolution 335, Codes and Zoning Department Monthly Report.
Resolved to receive and place on file a report from Stephen Imhoff, Code Enforcement Officer for the month of October 2013.
A motion.
So moved.
Mr. Manick, second. Mr. Wood, any discussion? Roll call.
Thomas Wood.
Yes.
Martin Manick.
Yes.
Paul Lemoy.
Yes.
Gerard Benedek.
Yes.
Bernie Bassett.
Yes, resolution carries. Resolution 336, Historians Monthly Report.
Resolved to receive and place on file a historian's report for the month of October 2013.
Mr. Wood, second.
Second.
Mr. Lemoy, any discussion? Roll call.
Thomas Wood.
Yes.
Martin Manick.
Yes.
Paul Lemoy.
Yes.
Gerard Benedek.
Yes.
Bernie Bassett.
Yes, resolution carries. Resolution 337, Supervisor's Monthly Financial Report.
Resolved to receive and place on file a supervisor's financial report for the month of October 2013.
A motion.
So moved.
Mr. Manick, second.
Second.
Mr. Renadette, any discussion? Roll call.
Thomas Wood.
Yes.
Martin Manick.
Yes.
Paul Lemoy.
Yes.
Gerard Benedek.
Yes.
Bernie Bassett.
Yes, resolution carries. Resolution 338, authorizing adoption of local law number 3 of the year 2013. Tax levy limit override.
Okay. Whereas Resolution 13-385 was duly adopted by the Town Board of Town of Plattsburgh to set a public hearing on October 15, 2013, to hear all interested parties on a proposed local law entitled "A Local Law Authorizing a Tax Levy Limit Override," pursuant to Section 3C, Subdivision 5 of the New York State General Municipal Law, authorizing the town to adopt said law. Whereas a notice of public hearing was duly advertised on October the 8th, 2013 in the Press Republican, the official paper of the Town of Plattsburgh, and all parties in attendance were permitted an opportunity to speak on behalf of or in opposed to said proposal local law, or any part of thereof to the overrides of the limit on which the real property taxes that may be levied by the town of Plattsburgh pursuant to General Municipal Law 3C, and to allow the town of Plattsburgh to adopt a budget for the fiscal year 2014 that requires a real property tax levy in excess of the tax levy limit as defined by General Municipal Law 3C. And whereas General Municipal Law 3C, which expressly authorizes the town board to override the tax cap by the adoption of a local law approved by a vote of 60% of the town board. And whereas the town board, town of Plattsburgh, after due deliberation, finds it is in best interest of the town to adopt said local law. Now therefore be resolved that the town board, town of Plattsburgh, hereby adopt said local law number 3 of the year 2013, entitled a local law authorizing a tax levy limit override, a copy of which is attached hereto and to be made part of this resolution. And it further be resolved that the town clerk be and hereby directed to enter said local law into the minutes of the said meeting and into the local law book of the town of Plattsburgh, and give due notice of the adoption of local law to the Secretary of State of New York, and that a copy of this resolution be given to the assessor, budget officer, and finance manager.
Have a motion. Mr. Woods, second.
Second.
Mr. Renadette, any discussion?
I think the numbering is wrong in the first whereas.
The resolution?
13,385 was duly adopted. We're on 13,338 with this resolution.
You're correct, I don't have sufficient minutes to go
Again, I
back
don't believe
and
it would change the
identify
intent of this, but I did want to point out that that looks like that's in error, that one there.
Let me see if I have a copy of that. I don't.
I know on October 7th, we passed a resolution 315.
Was that to set the public hearing?
Not,
That would make sense, it's 315 instead of 385.
I just have a copy of that particular information and don't have a copy of the specific language.
Well, what we will need to do is verify that, it may well be 315.
It is.
It is.
It's just, I know that we passed a resolution numbered 315 on October 7th. And on October 8th, we had an advertisement of this. And so I think it's approximate, but it gives us an idea of where to go.
You can simply delete the number.
You want me to go get it? I got it sitting right on the desk, I just took it off the board.
Well, if you did, why don't you get everyone to amend it versus
Gentlemen,
remove it?
it's number 285 from September 30th.
If you verify that, Rick, that's possible too, 285 instead of
Sounds very
385.
Thank you.
We're having trouble putting twos where threes belong and threes where two belong.
A little bit.
Well, it's all been read and we can discuss it if we want, so I'd just like to say that, I've been in favor of having a reserve fund for many years, and I feel that we need to have a sound budget, one that will take us into the future, and that it's necessary to override the cap to do that. And I would also like to say that in terms of the percentages that are bandied about in terms of what the percentage is of taxes increased, such as what was in the newspaper of 47%. It wasn't 47% of the taxes that you pay. If you pay $1,000, it wasn't going to go up $470. That's not what it was to be. statistics and mathematics, it can be used for almost anything. Basically, what we did, we reduced that budget to where it's 16%. And the 16% is not of the total amount that somebody has for taxes. The 16% is of the 1.66%, which is our cap, and that amounts to about 1/4%. So it is not an outrageous amount. We figured it out on a $150,000 home. It would be just a little in excess of $4 a month. So we're talking about $50 to $52 for a $150,000 home. So obviously it would be less if your home isn't worth that much. And I just wanted to point out that this is the accurate, this is a way of looking at it. And the amount that was put in the paper and the way they put it in the paper was not accurate. I feel that we need this to have a sound budget in the future.
Tom, I just want to note that the latest figure today, as we continue to crunch numbers, et cetera, the percent over the cap is actually 13 now. So it's down to 13.
So less than $50
Oh, definitely.
a year.
Anyone else?
I'd just like to point out, if I could, this is the 17th budget I've worked on since serving on in the time that I served on the town board. It was one of the most difficult budgets that I've ever had to work on. It came down to where jobs were on the line. And we were faced with, at the last public hearing, being challenged to lower the budget even more so that we did not exceed the cap. We would have had to literally cut 3 to 4 essential jobs in order to do that. The money's just not there. We've taken a real close look at everything that's available. There is no other available cuts other than, I guess we could have dissolved the recreation department completely, gotten rid of all of that, but then we'd have heard from a multitude of people whose interests lie in recreational programs. We could have cut more out of the highway department. That would have meant that the roads would not have been as safe this winter. One thing I discussed is we, by law, have to maintain our roads. They have to be sanded and salted so that for safety reasons. We're not required to sweep it back up. And I can imagine the firestorm that the board would have faced if we did not sweep the roads in the springtime. So I think it's safe to say that we have done everything we possibly could do. We've cut everywhere we could possibly cut. And while it's never good to have to look the public in the eye and say that your taxes are going to go up, this is one time when I have to say that, in all fairness, we have no other choice.
It was difficult, certainly for all the reasons mentioned, but and I had a couple of people ask me why such a change this year. We knew we had some challenges. The external audits, we knew there was a budgeting process that needed to change. Thank you, sir. 285 is correct. Until the numbers came in from department heads and then actually began to go into the budget, and unfortunately, it was way too close to the required time to report the tentative budget. We didn't have the time at all, and that process will change, to meet with department heads and do reductions, which did begin immediately after the tentative came in. There have been a number of municipalities that have done a tax cap override. We participated in webinars this year because the comptroller's office was very aware that a 2% cap may not always work, depending on the needs and the issues that municipalities are dealing with. But we also had to build that base. And Tom talks about, we talked way before we had the fiscal stress monitoring, way before the comptroller saw the trend where municipalities were running their balance, the fund balance, the cash surplus, their contingency items down to near and at zero, and that had to change. That was an issue we had to address at the same time this year. and I agree with what's been said, that I think this budget is responsible. I think it has, it's a bit frugal as well, which makes me nervous because we made some pretty drastic cuts. But it is responsible to the services and to our people. And numbers and percentages are very difficult, but when applied, and we've tossed some numbers around, it does come under $4 a month to the average, which is around $150,000. $1 would be too much, I'm sure, to many people. But we've also been able to keep it at bay each year up till now. And now is the time. I think it's as good as we can do, and hopefully we'll have a good year, 2014, and continue to build on this and be solid going forward. But again, so many things we don't control, in the form of equipment, in the form of natural disasters, in the form of potential litigation. You can't anticipate those items. Hopefully this will work for us. Any other comments?
Yes, I'd like to offer a few comments. I share the opinion that this is the most difficult budget that I've been involved with, and this is the 25th budget that I've worked on. Part of the problem, very clearly, is for the last 4 years, going back 2009, 10, 11, 12, and actually this year, the 13th. In each one of those years, we were dealing with trying to put a budget together in the midst of a recessionary climate, trying to minimize what the tax impact of our budget would be. We didn't have a cap in every one of those years, but we stayed, beneath that cap. But we did so by drawing on reserves, and we just arrived at the point where that's not viable anymore. Listened to a presentation at our workshop session on Thursday that we had, and well-intended, but I would tell Mr. Metz that what you laid out was an actual blueprint for what the controller is attacking, what he's after, what they will be looking for when they come in to do audits, etc. And it denies any responsibility or any response to the fiscal stress warnings that are out there. And Mr. Budvik, I know you spoke to the fact that well, the fiscal stress is brand new on the horizon, and they probably don't have it all worked out yet, and so we could ignore that for this coming year. I think one of the things that we're charged with, and anybody who sits in these chairs knows firsthand, we have a responsibility, a fiscal responsibility that we have to abide by. Once you are elected, it doesn't matter who voted for you, you have to represent all of the people. And our number one responsibility as board members is a fiscal responsibility. We have to pull together responsible budgets. I think if we were to pull a budget together this year that would be under the cap, it would be fiscally irresponsible for us to do that. I don't like the fact that we have a budget that's going to exceed the cap. I really think that we have, we have to make every effort that we can to have budgets that are beneath the cap. But I think we absolutely have to begin to build back a modest reserve. And certainly this budget does not call for, any stupendous contribution to building back the reserves, but we have to begin moderately to attack that problem and periodic, over a period of perhaps as long as a 4-year period, 5-year period, I think we can get ourselves back on the footing that we should be on. And if we have a plan to do that, then we have something that we can refer to when we are faced with auditors, who otherwise are going to, be very critical of budgets that don't meet the don't meet the fiscal stress test. And we were fortunate in our measurement that we passed, but we also were very aware of how close we were to that line where we wouldn't have passed. And I can tell you, if you put on a chart, what's the threat of not meeting the cap versus what's the threat of falling beneath the line on fiscal stress. One has monumental repercussions for the town. The other may have political repercussions. And I sit here totally prepared to deal with whatever political repercussions exist for having voted, as I will vote tonight, to override the cap. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'd just like to make one other comment, and that's that the override of the budget and the highway tax and everything is what the board does. It's not anything to do with what the highway superintendent would want to have or has any say in at this particular point in time. He has to manage his budget after we set the budget. So I just wanted to let people know that.
Point in time. Okay, roll call please.
Thomas Wood,
Yes.
Uri Brendadet,
Yes.
Mark Mannix,
I'm going to ask if we could back up off the roll call for a minute. I think we do need to amend our law. We do need to amend our resolution.
We've amended the number in the first whereas to 285.
Okay, I also think that first sentence needs to be amended. Whereas Resolution 13285 was duly adopted, and I think we should say on September 30th, 2013 by the Town Board of the Town of Plattsburgh to set a public hearing on October 15th. Without the date of the adoption of the resolution in there, it's somewhat misleading that it could be read or interpreted to read that the resolution was adopted on October 15th. It was the hearing that took place on October 15th.
Okay, I'm seeing public hearing before the date of October 15. How would you amend that again?
Back where it says duly adopted, was duly adopted on September 30th, 2013 by the Town Board of the Town of Plattsburgh.
Just inserting those words.
Yeah, making clear that the resolution was adopted on that date.
I have no problem.
Was duly adopted on October 15th,
On September 30th, 2013,
2013.
the Town of Plattsburgh set a public hearing on October 15th, 2013.
Right, the resolution adopted September 30, 2013.
Right.
Got it.
I believe that was all right.
Yes, it is. I've got the resolution on September 30.
Sorry, I
Okay.
meant to bring that up when I
Yep.
started.
Tom, you made the motion.
Yes, that's
Gerard?
Yes.
Concur. We've had 2 votes cast. I would ask if there's, I'll let our clerk actually go back through with the vote on this
Roll call.
resolution as amended one more time. Roll call.
Thomas Wood,
Yes.
Uri Brendadet,
Yes.
Martin Mannix,
Yes.
Paul Lemoy,
No.
Bertie Bassett.
Yes, resolution carries. Resolution 285. Excuse me. Resolution 339.
Whereas the town board, town of Plattsburgh has met at the time and place specified in the notice of the public hearing to review the entirety of the 2014 preliminary budget and heard all persons desirous to be heard. Now therefore, it is resolved that after the public hearing and the meeting with the department heads, the preliminary budget was amended and hereby is adopted as the final budget for the town of Plattsburgh for the fiscal year beginning the first day of January 2014. And that the budget is adopted in entirety detailed in the minutes of the proceedings of the town board. And it is further resolved that the supervisor of the town of Plattsburgh shall prepare and certify in duplicate copies of said annual budget as adopted by the town board together with the assessment rolls for benefit improvement adopted resolution or pursuant to section 116 and 202A subdivision 2 of the town law, and deliver one copy thereof to the Clinton County Board of Legislators. And it be further resolved that a copy of this resolution be given to the finance officer.
Have a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Mannix, second.
Second.
Mr. Renadette, any discussion? We should amend finance officer to finance manager is the title of the position. Do you concur with that, Marty, Gerard?
Yes.
Okay. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Thomas Wood,
Yes.
Gerard Renadette,
Yes.
Mark Mannix,
Yes.
Paul Moy,
No.
Bernie Bassett.
Yes, resolution carries. Resolution 340, delinquent water and sewer charges. Sewer charges relevies.
Resolved that the list of delinquent water and sewer charges in the respective districts for 2013 submitted by the Water and Sewer Department be accepted and placed on file, and that a copy be forwarded to the Clinton County Board of Legislators to be added to the 2014 tax roll, and a copy be given to the town clerk pursuant to section 198, section 3 of the town law. And it be further resolved that a copy of this resolution also be given to the budget officer and to the finance manager.
A motion.
So moved.
Mr. Renadette, second.
Second.
Mr. Mannix, any discussion?
Bernie, I know we got the total here, do we actually have the list of re-levies?
I don't, Paul.
That's what this says, do we have a copy of the re-levies?
No, I only have the total. I don't have that. I believe it is in the Water Department's office, but we didn't get one. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Thomas Wood,
Yes.
Gerard Renadette,
Yes.
Mark Mannix,
Yes.
Paul Moy,
Yes.
Bernie Bassett.
Yes, resolution carries. Resolution 341, completed assessment rolls for 2014.
Whereas the town board, town of Plattsburgh has met at the time and place specified in the notice of public hearing to review the completed assessment rolls for the ambulance, water, sewer, stormwater management, lighting, and highway district, and heard all persons desirous to be heard. Now therefore it is resolved that the completed assessment roll be and hereby are adopted as the annual assessment roll of the town of Plattsburgh. And it be further resolved that the supervisor of the town of Plattsburgh shall prepare and certify in duplicate copies of the assessment roll for the benefit of improvements adopted pursuant to section 116 and 202A subdivision 2 of the town law, and deliver one copy thereof to the Clinton County Board of Legislators. And it further resolved that a certified copy be given to the budget officer and finance manager.
A motion. Mr. Wood, do we have a second?
Second.
Mr. Renadette, any discussion?
We should just clarify that as of 2014, the budget officer and finance manager are one and the same.
Correct, starting January 1. Any other discussion? Roll call.
Thomas Wood,
Yes.
Gerard Renadette,
Yes.
Marty Mannix,
Yes.
Paul Lemoyne,
Yes.
Bernie Bassett.
Yes, resolution carries. Resolution 342, JCEO Services and Financial Assistance Agreement.
Whereas the town board, town of Plattsburgh, is in the receipt of the 2013-2014 annual agreement between the town of Plattsburgh and the Joint Council for Economic Opportunity of Plattsburgh and Clinton County Incorporated, which states the services and financial assistance rendered by both parties for the operation of the community outreach program in the town of Plattsburgh for a period commencing December 1st, 2013 and ending November 30th, 2014. Whereas a request for $20,329 was made, an increase over last year's charge of $18,920 that was paid in 2012. Whereas the town board has given consideration to the request, but with the economic environment and significant increases in the past 6 years, has decided to keep the contribution to the outreach program at its previous level. Now therefore be resolved that the supervisor is hereby authorized to make said payment in the net amount of $18,920 to JCO, and it is further resolved that the payment be made payable from the town of Plattsburgh general fund, and that the town board does hereby authorize the supervisor to sign and execute said agreement upon approval of the form by the town attorney. And it is further resolved that an executed copy of this agreement is returned to JCO for their files, and that the budget officer and finance manager also receive a certified copy.
Motion.
So moved.
Mr. Woods, second. Mr. Renadette.
Yeah.
Any discussion?
The date, again, I think we're having problems. The second whereas, the $18,920 that was paid for, it should be 2013.
As amended, Tom, Gerard?
Yes.
Any other discussions? Roll call.
Thomas Wood,
Yes.
Martin Mannix,
Yes.
Paul Lemoyne,
Yes.
Gerard Renadette,
Yes.
Bernie Bassett.
Yes, resolution carries. Resolution 343, Playground Capital Project Closure.
Whereas the capital project titled Playground Capital Project opened in 2000, and all the work has been completed in that. Whereas it is determined that all debt related to the project has been paid in full, and there remains $184.31 plus interest in the Playground Capital Project Fund. And whereas a portion of the expenditure were paid from the general fund, now therefore be resolved that the town board is hereby authorized the closure of the Playground Capital Project, and that said funds be reimbursed to the general fund in the amount of $184.31 plus interest. And it be further resolved that a copy of this resolution be given to the budget officer and to the finance manager.
A motion.
So moved.
Mr. Mannix, second.
Second.
Mr. Renadette, any discussion? Roll call.
Thomas Wood,
Yes.
Martin Mannix,
Yes.
Paul Lemoyne,
Yes.
Gerard Renadette,
Yes.
Bernie Bassett.
Yes, resolution carries. Resolution 344, Cable Water, Cumberland Headwater, Moffett Road Water, and Archie Berto Water Capital Project closures.
Whereas the capital project entitled the Cadeville Water Capital Project, Cumberland Head Water Capital Project, Moffett Road Water Capital Project, and Archie Berto Road Capital Project were opened as outlined below, as so noted. Whereas it is determined that all cash balances have been applied to the applicable debt related to each project, and there remains a zero cash balance in each capital fund project. Therefore be resolved that the town board does authorize the closure of the Cadeville Water Project, Cumberland Head Water Project, Moffett Road Water Capital Project, Archie Berto Road Water Capital Project. And it be further resolved that a copy of this resolution be given to the budget officer, finance manager, and director of water and wastewater.
Have a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Renadette, second.
Second.
Mr. Mannix, any discussion? Roll call.
Thomas Wood,
Yes.
Mark Danek,
Yes.
Paul Moy,
Yes.
Brad Renadick.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes, resolution carries. Resolution 345, RIP 3 sewer capital project closure.
Whereas the capital project entitled, Route 3 Sewer Capital Project was opened in the early 1980s and all work has been completed. And whereas it is determined that the debt related to this project has been paid in full and there remains $56,004.85, plus interest in the capital project account. And whereas Director of Water and Wastewater Department requests that $45,000 be transferred to the Sorrel Lift Station capital project and the remaining $11,004.85 plus interest be transferred to the Route 3 Lift Station capital project to offset the expenditures. Therefore, be resolved that the town board does hereby authorize the closure of Route 3 sewer capital project and the reimbursement of the capital project as noted. And it be further resolved that a copy of this resolution be given to the budget officer, finance manager, and director of water and wastewater department.
Have a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Manick, second. Mr. Wood, any discussion?
I would just like, I'd like to comment. When I look at this and you say $56,000, but I think it's particularly appropriate that the funds are being applied the way they're being applied. Originally, it was part of the Route 3 sewer capital project, and they will today be used to further expand the infrastructure that exists on Route 3. We just most recently have to do that Sorrel Avenue lift station in order to accommodate expansion at the mall that adjoins that property, and the Route 3 lift station, the demands to upgrade that project are again a result of the additional growth that's happening on Route 3. So I think it's a very appropriate use of the funds to apply them to those projects.
Any other discussion? Roll call.
Thomas Wood,
Yes.
Mark Danek,
Yes.
Paul Moy,
Yes.
Brad Renadick.
Yes.
Bernie Bassett.
Yes, resolution carries. Resolution 346, 2013 general fund budget amendment.
Whereas during the 2013 fiscal year, various employees needed to make changes in their health insurance plans. And whereas the 2013 general budget was not funded for such changes at the time of the budget approval in 2013. Now therefore be resolved that the town board does authorize the following budget amendment as so noted.
Have a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Renadick, second.
Second.
Mr. Lemoy, any discussion?
Yeah, Bernie, the only question I have is on the first line item, the increase for town board health insurance. There's nobody on the town board that's eligible for health insurance. I believe all that money should have been in town board health retiree insurance, and it was probably put in the budget wrong to start with, but there's nobody sitting here that, with the exception, I believe, of Mr. Wood. Marty's getting his health insurance because of his previous term on the town board, not because of his current term on the town board. This should all be retiree health insurance. I believe the only one sitting here that's eligible for it is Mr.
Well,
Wood.
I do have,
No, he's with the state.
I'm not.
he's on the state.
But you only get, you weren't entitled to health insurance coming back to the town board. You were entitled to your health insurance when you retired, because you retired from the town board the first time,
Correct.
and have maintained it.
Correct.
Yeah. So it's not a current town board member, it's a retired town board member. That's what
So were you saying put the 640 with the 810?
that whole line item should have always been there.
But I think, yeah,
Patrick, and I don't put you on the spot, but
No, we were just discussing it actually. Because Marty is not considered a retiree because of the hours that he was working. CFA told us that we had to put him on as an active employee, and that's when we had to increase it. Because we had him
Anything
as a
over 20 hours.
retiree, and then they said we had to switch into an active employee. because he's over, what, 30 hours a week, I think, so.
And that
Close
was,
to 20 hours,
that
wasn't
wasn't
it?
our
20
choice.
Yeah.
That was the insurance company's choice.
Okay, but as a new hire to the town board, he wasn't eligible to receive that. He isn't eligible to receive health insurance as a current sitting town board member. I mean, that's a resolution that was passed before he came back on the board. The town board members aren't authorized to get health insurance, so I mean.
I think the distinction that they're making with, as receiving insurance, as you said,
Yep,
my
absolutely.
my participation in the insurance was premised by my prior service on the board. But what happened was, because I was there, because I was credited with working more than 20 hours a week, the insurance company said he needs to be, and in my particular case, the distinction that happens there is you're not on a Medicare supplement plan, you go on the same plan that any other active employee would have. And that's what we were required to do.
I understand what he's talking about, but Jim, are we in violation of the very resolution and law we passed?
Let me go back to Paul's original concern, which was the language. Both of these items are from lines 1010, 8500, and 8550. Okay, I'll retract that.
Well, go ahead, what you're saying.
No, I was just wondering, are we in violation of the very resolution we passed by doing that? Because we're actually offering health insurance to an active town board member when we passed a resolution not authorizing.
But I think, and if I could interject, I think that Mr. Mannix was acting not as an active town board member in the performance of the duties that carried him over the 30 hours a week. He was acting as a full-time deputy town supervisor. And as such, I don't believe there's anybody can be appointed deputy town supervisor. Doesn't have to be a board member. There is no conflict of interest if, say, a board member were dog control officer, and they could collect 2 paychecks. So I'm assuming that that's where we're at with this, and that there's no violation of the resolution because Mr. Mannix was considered a separate employee by virtue of the title and the position that he was holding.
We can also talk with Clark to see if it makes a difference if it's in a.
I'm just saying, rather, I want to see the resolution rather than just say, yeah, he is or no, he isn't. I'll look and I'll get back to you tomorrow.
And maybe we get some feedback from our insurance carrier that brought this to our attention, that you're right, Julie, it was a different position, it wasn't a stipend as a counselor.
Which is what created the need to have to pay the additional $640 in health insurance. And I know for a fact that there are certain positions that are in conflict, that could create a conflict of interest, like you can't be a town board member and a town justice, because it creates a conflict of interest. But you can hold other positions in the town that are not a conflict of interest, provided you don't vote on your own salary. So I'm guessing that the position that Marty held, which in effect goes away next year, so we're arguing over the case of 1 year.
Okay, we'll have to look.
Do we want to table this for the sake of that, or do we want to move forward?
Do we need to do this amendment in order to complete the movement of funds to pay the bills? And we can table this if someone wants to make the motion.
I'm not disputing that the amount of money needs to be paid. I just want to be clear about that. He's clearly entitled to insurance by rules that were set up many years before any of us were sitting here. But when, in 2006, when we passed that legislation that said town board members, I just want to make the distinction that no town board member here is collecting insurance on rules that we set in 2006. He's collecting insurance on rules that were set during his previous administration. And however that gets, I mean, if $640 winds up being distinguished as retiree insurance, I think that's correct, because that's why he's getting the benefit.
I would move we table this till we get a definitive answer on that one item.
It shouldn't take very long.
We have a motion to table by Mr. Renner. Do I have a second?
Sorry.
Mr. Lemoy, any discussion? A roll call and motion to table.
Thomas Wood,
Yes.
Mark Mannix,
Yes.
Paul Moy,
Yes.
Gerard Renner.
Yes.
Vernon Bassett.
Yes, this will be tabled and come back at our next regular meeting. Resolution 347, 2013 Water and Sewer Administration Water and Sewer Fund Budget Amendments.
Whereas certain line items have been overspent in the water and sewer administration and water and sewer fund budget during the 2013 fiscal year. Whereas the budget amendment will be offset from existing budgeted line items for additional revenue for the 2013 budget. Therefore, be resolved that the town board, town of Plattsburgh, authorizes the final budget amendment as so noted. And it will be further resolved that a copy of this resolution be given to the budget officer, finance manager, and water and wastewater director.
Have a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Wood, second.
Second.
Mr. Renadette, any discussion?
Yes, I'm concerned that the first statement under the first resolve, right, increases revenues and premium and accrued interest on obligations by $38,000, and it increases appropriation to bond interest by $38,000. One of those, I think, should be decreased. No, they're both increases?
You're increasing the budget.
Pardon?
You're increasing the budget, so you have to
We're
increase both of
increasing the
them.
budget. Where is the money coming from that we're putting into that item?
That was interest on EFC funds.
From the EFC gives us money, a partial payment on our interest on the bond. So we have to, in order to meet county standards, we have to recognize the income coming into the municipality. So that's what we're doing here. So if our bond payment is $38,000, 2 times a year, they give us $19,000 for each bond interest payment. So we have to recognize that as revenue. So that's what we're doing here.
Okay, does that,
Does that make sense, Marty, or? They don't literally actually give us the cash, but we make a payment to them and they reduce our payment by the amount that they give us. So we have to recognize that as income to the town.
So that it can then get applied to the balance?
Well, it's gotta show up in our revenue account, so we got.
Okay, now I understand what you're saying.
okay, any other discussion? Roll call?
Thomas Wood,
Yes.
Mark Vanek,
Yes.
Paul Moy,
Yes.
Robert Renza.
Yes.
Bernie Bassett.
Yes, resolution carries. Resolution 348, side letter of understanding, union seniority.
Whereas the town and union are parties to a collective bargaining agreement dated January 1, 2011 through December 31st, 2013, which terms and conditions for providing herein. Whereas Article 3 of CBA outlines terms and conditions related to seniority. Whereas the parties agree that the language does not clearly address the determination of a seniority date for those employees who resign from a position in a union, have a break in membership with the union, and are subsequently rehired in a position in that union. And whereas the parties desire to enter into a side letter of understanding to set forth modification agreement to, by, and between the parties related to Article 3 of the CBA. Therefore be resolved that the supervisor for the town be authorized to enter into the attached side letter of understanding with the Teamsters Local 687, and a side letter of understanding that becomes effective immediately, and a copy be given to the finance manager, Teamster business agent, Mickey Smith.
A motion.
So moved.
Mr. Renadette, second. Mr. Lemoy, any discussion?
Have you talked to the union about this?
They wrote it.
And where it says number 1 under side letter, the first one, number 1, it says bargaining.
Actually, let me go back and clarify. I know I said they did. The actual draft was done first by Rachel, and then we did some amendments. Now, number 1, what's your question, Tom?
It says who voluntarily leave.
Right.
Okay, now, then it says over here in the resolution that if they have a break in membership.
Right, the side letter was, is addressing, again, I question the word voluntarily leave as well. It's addressing the concern for members who may leave the union through no choice of their own. For example, they're furloughed, their positions are eliminated. They may be an individual who loses their position due to a budget constraint, and then something changes, somebody else retires, and as you know, the last one out is the first one back. So in that situation, because it wasn't voluntarily leaving their position, they would not be subject to the same loss and would be entitled to pick up their relationship with the town where it was when they were forced to leave their position. That's the intent of that.
Totally different for somebody who on their own voluntarily elects to leave the union. They're gonna go out and get a different job, or maybe they're gonna go to work for some other country, maybe they're gonna start their own construction company or whatever. And then, say 5 years later, they wanna come back. When they come back to the union, what the union says is their interpretation of the rules, and that's all that this letter is doing, or this agreement is doing, is making clear that the union's position is you start with a new seniority date. You don't go back and pick up
Then the
nine.
date you came back, right?
Correct.
It's the date you come back.
And it says-
It's kind of harsh, but that's the way the union rules are. And that's, I mean, they feel rather strongly that was their interpretation of the agreement that we entered
And
into.
if it's involuntary, it's you stay with your date you hire?
You have those years of service, and if you then reestablished as a member, you get that credit.
It says it becomes effective immediately, so does it apply to all positions vacated?
It would, but those would be involuntary positions. This is really addressing someone who left for a non-union position in the town, or as Marty said, they started their own construction company, came back 5 years or 5 days later. If you were off to seek your fortune, you start over from ground zero.
This is what I guess maybe town's question is, it's retroactive.
This will be effective to create the current seniority list that will be used for any cuts that could happen this year. We have a seniority list. The concern is an individual in particular that fits this language. The union is indicating that it is their belief, their intention, that if you left service voluntarily, and you came back, you start over. And that will impact one person who's currently an active employee.
I think if we were to look at what is an effective date of this, I believe, because we're referencing the agreement that began on January 1st, 2011, that it is retroactive to that date. Because that was their concern, that needed, in their minds, to be more clearly stated. So this is addressing that issue.
Correct. Any other questions? They're good questions. We haven't had a lot of time to discuss this. I want to be sure everyone's comfortable with what it means and how it's used. But as an addendum to the existing agreement, its life is part of the 2011 through 13 negotiated labor agreement. Any other discussion? Okay, roll call.
Thomas Wood,
Yes.
Martin Manick,
Yes.
Paul Moy,
Yes.
Gerard Renadette.
Yes.
Bernie Bassett.
Yes, resolution carries. That's all I have for this evening. a couple amendments in there, but we'll get those done. Okay, with that, I don't have any update right now. Things are very active relative to negotiations. I'm expecting some things to change this week, but I have nothing new right now. When we're done, I may be making a phone call for a while this evening, and we may make some progress. If no one has anything else, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Mr. Renner, second.
Second.
Mr. Mannix, any discussion? Roll call.
Thomas Wood,
Yes.
Mark Manick,
Yes.
Alden Moy.
Yes.
Bart Rivers.
Yes.
Bernie Dorchenez.
Yes, we'll stand adjourned at 7:54.